G'day, Jeff Lewis here from Seriously Series, and welcome to another bush mechanic, story. I'm currently cleaning up the shed at the moment and slowly trying to find the workbench amongst all the other projects and parts and all the rest, but you get that when you have a few vehicles that you need to tend to. This story here today really sort of arcs back to the innovative nature that we all need to have and possess when we're out there on the open trail or taking a track or two to a place that is little known by many. It also will build up to what can only be described as the best adventure documentary out there at the moment. If you're in the UK, US or Australia, you can watch this on Apple TV, and if you want to find out this and more, you can watch this right here, right now, by clicking on that subscribe button down below and clicking on that notification button too. So anyway, let's get into it. So, over the many adventures that Damon and I have done over the years, we've had to come up with some pretty ingenious means that most modern adventurers don't really have to tend to, because they're too worried about getting things to slot in window sills so they've got somewhere to put their arms. That's a concern, but not for us. We are more concerned about just keeping the vehicle moving forward, just those little trinkety things. But when I make up a on the move sort of impromptu bodge job, innovative, ingenious piece of engineering to solve a particular issue out there in the middle of nowhere, I actually keep it, and it becomes a bit of a trophy here amongst all the other bric-a-brac that you can see behind me. And this bit here, or this trophy today, is a gearbox mount. Doesn't sound very interesting, but like anything on this channel, as you know, it's when you look into something that's when it gets really, really interesting. Now, every vehicle out there, and I'm going to shatter your illusions, even the 70 series Land Cruiser has an Achilles heel. They all have weaknesses because they're all designed by us human beings, and we ourselves are not perfect. You might think you're perfect, but ask your significant other or ask your mates, and by the time I finish this sentence, you will get an irrefutable answer coming back to you thick and fast, and it will start with no. We're not perfect, and neither are engineers, so there's always going to be faults and flaws in any four-wheel drive. What we want to do, or how we get around those, is what makes this, what we do here and you, so interesting. Now, this ties into Road to Ruin, the documentary film that Damon and I have put together. That's up on Apple TV in Australia, the UK and US, which you can watch. And basically, we had an absolute hell of a time, and not necessarily in the fun terms. It was character building, as I've talked about on the channel before, but it really pushed our skill sets to the absolute limit, and a lot of fables and wife tales in regards to bush mechanics became true. One of these was an Achilles heel with the series Land Rover that is almost pretty much unheard of. You have to be pretty unlucky for this to happen, I guess you could say. And we had horrible fuel problems, and we were finally having just an absolute awesome run. And the last video I did about sort of bush mechanics stories and that was about snapped axles. Well, that wasn't the only thing. After we snapped the axle, we had to sort of make our way back to civilization to get more parts, and that journey itself was a adventure. In driving along on this very, very rough gravel track, I won't give it the joy of calling it a road, struggling with the vehicle because it's obviously front wheel drive and open differential, so it's obviously getting grip wherever it can. The vehicle's moving all over the show. We've had to work the vehicle really, really hard to actually get out of the sand dune system that it's come out of. Something else occurred. For some odd reason, and it had done it all day, the handbrake kept coming on. It would slowly chatter its way up, 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 and up. And no, I hadn't put any special pills in the fuel or anything like that. It was just doing it. And basically, I didn't know why. The day pressed on and we just kept on moving forward, and then towards the late afternoon, we were sort of getting close to having pretty much enough of it and finding a place to camp on the side of the road. But the throttle linkage started sticking and the engine started over revving, which was really, really perplexing. So what was the cause? Well, we couldn't find that out that day, but it was in fact the next day, while I was mucking around with the rear end or the rear axle assembly, that Damon came across the startling fact. And that was that the entire motor had rotated about 20 to 15 degrees towards the driver's side. Now, it had done that, and while moving its way over and keeling over to have a rest, it had actually stretched out the throttle linkage, and that's why the throttle was obviously going on. Now, after all the mishaps that we'd had up to that point, though it was a pain, it was just another day. Every day was like that for 3.5 weeks. And so we'd sort of become accustomed to it. Looking into it further, it got worse. Both the engine mounts had completely and utterly shattered. They'd just been obliterated. One of the gearbox mounts on the passenger side of the vehicle was completely destroyed. The only one that was still holding the entire transmission and engine in place was on the driver's side. If that had broken, and Damon had put the brakes on suddenly, the entire engine and transmission with the steel fan on the water pump would have gone forward and smashed and chewed its way through the radiator, therefore strickening the vehicle completely. Or we would have had to somehow find some cement, Spinifex resin, and actually plug up all the cores of the radiators that had been destroyed. So not a 5-minute job basically, and not something that would buff out easily. So in the middle of nowhere, what the hell are we going to do? And this is where, I don't know if you're religious or not, and look, I'm just not an arrogant kind of guy, so I don't think things just happen because I'm awesome. They don't, because I know I make mistakes. So, I think you should succumb to the fact that there is someone up there looking down on us, whoever that is, and things don't just happen because you get lucky. Where we decided to stop that day, get this, was at a place near a large tank, and there was all this twisted steel. A Southern Cross windmill had been bulldozed or pushed over 2 days earlier. 2 days. That Southern Cross windmill was built in the 1930s. That Southern Cross windmill was held together with Whitworth nuts and bolts. And guys and girls, if you don't know what that is, give it a little bit of a Google and you'll be amazed. Either way, you need special spanners and sockets, and it just so happens, because the Land Rover uses Whitworth nuts and bolts, I had the very sockets and spanners that was required to take parts off that windmill. You see, you can't just say that's down to luck. There's something else going on. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Damon, Stevie and myself got the gearbox mount and basically cut the studs off either side. We then got a drill and we drilled through the gearbox mount, and then what we did, because the rubber was all completely destroyed as you can see, we then used Celastic to kind of stick it together, and then we got a Whitworth bolt off the actual Southern Cross windmill and restored the completely and utterly shattered gearbox mount. Now, how did we fix the motor? Well, that's a story for another time on another video, but suffice to say, by having that fortune of that windmill being pushed over and no longer required, meant that we could get the Series 3 back on the road, get into civilization, and for me to be here to tell you this tale here today. So anyway, always keep an eye out for any bits of debris on the side of the track, and if you ever get stuck in a situation, remember one thing: give it a go. What's the worst thing that could happen? You just get another option to try again. So anyway, thanks for stopping by. Hopefully you've enjoyed this little story, and remember, you know, people say bush mechanics is dead. As long as people are traveling to remote areas, it's always going to be alive. So anyway, click on that subscribe button down below if you enjoyed this. Click on the notification button too. Give it a like if you thought it was half decent, this video. But please do support us on Patreon. This helps these videos and more come your way. Anyway, I better keep cleaning up the workshop, so I'll catch you in the next one. See you then. Right, where am I going to put that?